Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere, and welcome to this week's episode of the Newcastle. We are from the Niche-Case, theniche-case.com, the whare of all big Aotearoa sporting yarns and kōrero. Not every Kiwi sport, just the sports we care about, just the sports we follow, and just the sports we can be bothered tracking as in depth as we do. Unfortunate news has just come through Nico the wild card. We've got the three letters that no sports fan likes to hear as regards to an injury. Kane Williamson, he's got a bung ACL. So shout out to the IPL. We love the IPL over here at the Niche-Case, and it's good to see Kiwi cricketers, the greatest Kiwi cricketers, getting injured in the IPL, another three-letter thing we love. When you factor in like all the FBI, the DEA, all those type of organizations, then you got the ACL, then you got the IPL. The three-letter naming thing is a bit of a niggly thing in this world. But Kane Williamson has done his ACL. Give it a bit
of TNC, that's all right.
Yeah. There you go, TNC. So probably a lot better than the ACL.
Yeah, we're balancing out some heavy weight there.
Yeah, geez, that was hypocritical of me. We are a three-letter organisation, the Niche-Case. Kane Williamson's done his ACL in the IPL, and I found it quite interesting, like just the difference in how these injuries are reported on. Obviously, when you're watching a lot of rugby league and a lot of rugby union as well, ACLs happen, and they happen quite frequently. Heck, you might even do your MCL. That's how frequent these knee injuries happen. It's the ACL, it's the MCL.
You might do both at the same time. That happens as well.
Shit the bed, you may do. Kane Williamson suffered a knee injury in the IPL. And it was never... apart from Kane Williamson returning to Aotearoa rather quickly, it was a bit up in the air as to what he'd actually done to his knee. Now we've received news that it is the ACL. Great timing, Kane Williamson. Fantastic summer, one of the best summers he's ever had, heading into a World Cup, and the big man's done his ACL. Bit of a bummer to start the podcast, but hopefully Kane Williamson can get into some, Papamoa Waters recovery, Bay of Plenty recovery. Any medicinal vitamins he needs, he'll get them. Any maybe a bit of the LeBron James, the doctors, the blood spinners, and all that good stuff. We want Kane Williamson fit and firing for the World Cup. So, kia kaha to the bro, Kane Williamson. What do you reckon about the ACL?
Well, it is a really weird cricket injury, isn't it? Like, it's just not an injury you get. And I know, like, as you say, it's very common in rugby league. It's arguably even more common in football, particularly women's football. Like, women's football has an epidemic of ACL injuries. There's, like, 3 or 4 of the best players in the world won't be at the World Cup because they've had suffered ACLs this season. I think Beth Mead might have one from England's best player at the Euros, and Vivian Miedema is, like, the best striker in the world, plays for Netherlands. She's got an ACL injury. Like, needless to say, Rhea Percival is coming back from an ACL injury right now. Like, that's not only her either. Annalie Longo has an ACL injury. Before the last World Cup, Liv Chance, Amber Hearn, and Hannah Wilkinson all had ACL injuries. Chance got back in time to be at pretty much full capacity for the World Cup. Wilkinson got back in time to play at it, but clearly wasn't fully match fit or anything like that. Hearn didn't get back in time and then ended up retiring. Percival should be back in time for the World Cup. She'll hopefully play a few games for Spurs before the end of the season, and she's a massive player for the football fans. Talk about them in a little bit. Annalie Longo, touch and go. Don't think that's going to happen. But from what I know from following like the recovery things, it's generally like 9 to 12 months in ACL. And I saw the Williamson injury, like I went and looked at the replay of it. He's just trying to take a catch over the boundary and he lands awkwardly on his one leg, sort of coming down as he did. I thought ACL straight away. But I see why it wasn't... First of all, you got to do the scans before you know. But second of all, it's like, it's just not a common cricket injury. Like, it's just not an injury you see very often, so I think a lot of people didn't necessarily make that assumption unless they were used to watching those contact sports with lots of running and lots of changing direction where those injuries do happen. But, mate, I don't think he'll be back for the ODI World Cup. Like, that's just not within the time frame of that happening, and that's a worry, because he was literally the player of the tournament at the last ODI World Cup. That's not what you want. That's some very, very bad news.
If only he had the knees of Glenn Phillips, because Glenn Phillips has done some funky stuff at the batting crease, and it's like, are you sure you're sweet? Like, are you all good to continue? And then you just like, it's all good, no worries. Keeps batting, no dramas.
Well, he like, when he scored that 100 against the West Indies in the T20, like a couple summers ago, you remember when he did that big slog sweep for 6 and like dislocated his kneecap at the same time and then just like popped it back in? Now, I've done this before, I know what I'm doing. It hurts, but sorted, you know. One of those little cheeky knee injuries that you can manage, it would have been a lot nicer to hear. But the old, the dreaded ACL, eh?
Well, I don't think the knee injury actually matters. It's whether you've got the knees of the most exciting cricketer in the world, Glenn Phillips. That is the difference. Welcome to the Niche Cast. We have our Patreon podcast. Sorry, I just drew a blank there. I was thinking about Glenn Phillips' knees. We have our Patreon feed. If you do like support, if you do like the Niche Case and you would like to support all our content, the podcast, the website, and the email newsletter, you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/our Niche Case, EL Niche Case. You can support us directly, straight up the guts, and we also drop extra podcasts there every week. This week we've got a combined Blakcaps and Warriors podcast there for the Patreon whānau, so check that out if you are a member of the Patreon whānau. Otherwise, it is the best way to support all our content directly, and you can basically have a hand in supporting the Niche Case at this as we grow. We also whip out our email newsletter every Monday and Friday evening. Tomorrow's a Friday, and I've already got it written down here. Going to be tracking the NRL women's signings, because we've got Gail Broughton. She was signed by the Broncos, and she will now be joined by Mele Hofunga, who was an absolute star for the Kiwi Ferns at the last World Cup without having played any NRLW. She was one of the best players at the World Cup with no prior NRLW experience. She's in the Broncos team, so suddenly the Broncos have Gail Broughton and Mele Hofunga. Your Dragons have been busy in the signings as well, signing a couple of low-key players, Cortez Tapo and Alexis Tiano. So I don't have the name right in front of me, but the Dragons have been very busy under Jamie Soward, so I'll be keeping track of all those NRLW signings. Also going to drop some more cricket notes, because it's coming to the end of the cricket season, so we've got lots of different bits and bobs to drop in the Friday email newsletter. I won't ask you, Nico, about your email newsletter, because you've got no idea what you're going to write tomorrow. You always surprise yourself on a Friday morning. But you can subscribe to that via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. Every Monday and Friday, we send that out with a whole lot of Kiwi sports information. And on a Monday, you're going to get me reacting to the Warriors' performance, hopefully another win against the Knights that we will discuss later in the podcast. And of course, theniche-case.com. I've got a preview to the Warriors versus Knights encounter, as well as SG Ball and New South Wales Cup information. Got a recap of the Central District's Plunket Shield Championship. That is on the website. Got key trends about the Warriors footy as well on the website. Nico's got the Flying Kiwis live on the website right now. And what's the other football thing you're working on?
Bit of Wellington Phoenix post-season, I suppose. Just looking at a few of the positives and the trends that emerged from their second season in existence. I do have a little bit of an idea of what I'm going to write in the email too. I'll say that might find a little bit of a cheeky Football Ferns preview. Might find a bit of a some of them Aussie NBL signings. A couple young Kiwi fellas coming out of college that have found homes in Australia, which is very exciting. I was
excited to see Will McDowell-White has re-signed with the Breakers.
That too. Big news.
Love to see that. But your Wellington Phoenix thing is about the Wellington Phoenix woman, right? Their season review.
Yeah.
Right. So all of that is on the website. You'll be able to read that Wellington Phoenix woman debrief by the time you're listening to this on our website, theniche-case.com. Mindfulness, vamos.
Mindfulness, courtesy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, famous poetic, I don't know, what do you call it, a long poem, something like that, which used to be seemingly quite a common reference point for people, and no one seems to talk about it that much anymore. I think we got to bring that fella back. But a line from within it: when time lets slip a perfect little hour, take it, for it will not come again.
When time lets slip a perfect hour, take it, because it will not come again.
Pretty much. I think a lot of our mindfulness is stuff about being patient and disciplined and staying true to the journey. I think it's also nice to chuck one in now and then, which is just enjoy the good times as well. When things are going really well, celebrate them. Just live it up when you get the opportunity, because it doesn't happen that often. You gotta live a life as well.
Celebrate your wins. You got to take the limousine up Mount Victoria. You got to have a couple of beers in the changing room. You got to celebrate your wins, because they don't come around as often as we would like. And those wins have kind of vanished for City Kickboxing in the UFC. There's far less winning happening for City Kickboxing, and that involves Israel Adesanya, because he lost to Alex Pereira late last year, and now he's back for a UFC rematch against Alex Pereira this weekend in the UFC. It has been tough times for City Kickboxing. A couple of fighters have been losing in the UFC. I think the only winning fighters at the moment is Carlos Ulberg. Kai Kara-France is among the best fighters in his division. Dan Hooker's a busy boy in his division as well. Israel Adesanya, he's only got losses to Jan Blakcaps, which was jumping up a weight class, and now Alex Pereira, he had 2 losses to Alex Pereira in kickboxing, had a 3rd loss to Alex Pereira in the UFC, so he's 0-3 against Alex Pereira. Now he's fighting him again, and I don't know what's going to happen here. It will be a test for City Kickboxing, the coaching staff, because it's a massive challenge. And I threw that up in ahead of the last kind of wave of City Kickboxing, because you had Alex Volkanovski coming up against Islam Makhachev. Volkanovski moving up a weight class, and you had Adesanya versus Pereira around that time as well. Both of them lost, but both of them displayed some, coaching excellence from City Kickboxing, as well as their own athletic excellence. Like Volkanovski had a decent fight, and some thought he won that fight against Makhachev, so that's a pretty impressive performance from Eugene Behrman and the coaching staff at City Kickboxing. It was interesting, in the wash-up to the loss against Pereira, Eugene Behrman did hint at some things that Adesanya did or didn't do in the fight that might have held him back. But now they have ample footage, ample experience against Pereira and the tools he has in the UFC octagon. So I'm curious to see what happens there. And even the loss it was a pretty close fight. Adesanya rocked Pereira with 5 seconds to go in one of the rounds, and he was basically knocked out standing up. And then the bell rang after he got his bell rang, and then he came out for the next few rounds and eventually finished Adesanya in the closing moments. So it is a fascinating fight for Adesanya, because he was very quick to tell people he was injured in that fight, so it was a bit weird, just the whole, but I was injured, that type of narrative. Don't want to say excuses, but it is weird when that stuff happens.
I mean, he might have actually been injured, but lots of fighters don't mention the injury until after they lose. He might be an exception to the rule, but that's a common thing that you hear.
Yeah, it's just part of the package. And he's coming up against Pereira, who loves to kick, so they both love to kick. And I've just in absorbing information about this fight, a couple of things have stood out, and that is Pereira's checking Adesanya's kicks, which for those like me who know nothing about fighting people, because we're mindful peacekeepers, but instead of getting your leg smashed by one of Adesanya's kick, there is something you can do where you check the leg kick to null and void that leg kick. So basically you're preparing your leg to be hit by their leg, checking the kick. And Pereira was very effective in doing that, and he's also a very effective kicker because he's a kickboxer like Adesanya. So that's an interesting battle, because what usually happens is Adesanya controls the early round or rounds with his kicking. And they just land a bunch of kicks to set up the distance and also take away those tools from the opponent. The other thing is I've seen some stuff about Adesanya's jab and how the Adesanya jab, kind of like a city kickboxing jab, obviously they didn't invent it, but it's something they use a lot, is where you jab and you leave your jab out in front of your opponent. So you jab, but you leave it in their face so to disguise some other shots. Pereira has a fantastic jab, and his jab is like a piston. It's a weapon. It's straight out, straight back. And that dude has a whole lot of power. So it's a little interesting battle there, but Adesanya needs to win. City kickboxing needs a win. And these are interesting times for city kickboxing, because Adesanya's the main dude. He's the big Donnie at the top of the UFC division. And there aren't many of them left for city kickboxing right now. And this is a fight where Adesanya is 0-3 against Pereira in his career. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens here.
Yeah, the history makes it quite an interesting matchup, but I don't know. The fact that he lost to him twice in kickboxing, then lost to him again in the UFC, makes it sound like there's this wider trend. I almost wonder, he might have just lost in separate ways both times. They are different sports.
Well, one of the kickboxing losses, Adesanya was winning. It was a points decision victory, and even Alex Pereira seemingly looked surprised that he won. So saying it's 0-3 ignores a couple of details. Very close matchup that Adesanya probably thought he won, and then you come in this UFC fight. Adesanya lost late in the fight, but again, he basically knocked Pereira out with a couple seconds remaining in a round, and he was able to recover to finish the fight. So it's the devil is in the details, but on a general perception, it's you're 0-3 against this dude. Maybe there's a reason for that, when you're speaking generally.
And one of those reasons, by the sounds of what you're saying at least, particularly with the leg checking, is he's got a guy with seemingly very, very high pedigree, similarly to Adesanya, kickboxing background, which maybe just gives him that advantage in being able to, nullify the things that Adesanya does best. And therefore it becomes a much more even fight than what he's had against guys who are maybe a little bit more, either MMA specialists or would it be fair to say a lot of these dudes are grapplers and or just looking to lead with their fists or whatever, or he does seem to have Adesanya does seem to have a little bit of stylistic difference to a lot of the other guys he's come up against. I don't know, that might just be me being cursory glancing, but
it's the bait. That's the city kickboxing recipe: is world-class striking and adequate adequate takedown defense, but you do have they can attack with their grappling. So that this fight's interesting because, like you said, you've got two strikers, but Pereira's massive, and he's also got a bit of wrestling in his team and his camp, so he could attack with his grappling, his takedowns, jiu-jitsu, whatever. Adesanya can do that as well, because again, city kickboxing is very effective grappling. But when they fought last time, Pereira was just so much bigger than him. So I don't know if Adesanya can apply his grappling, his takedowns to someone who is bigger, like Pereira. But then if Pereira tries it, Adesanya has fantastic takedown defense, but Pereira's just a massive unit, so he might be able to do it easier.
And that's also when he went up a weight class and fought Blakcaps, that was also Adesanya's big trouble there, was that the size difference was something he just couldn't overcome. Because the rematches are always really interesting because it becomes such a tactical battle where it's like you have this entire, not blueprint, but you just have all this information from the first time they fought. Like the guys have done the rounds against each other, they've figured things out, and so it becomes less about just the raw abilities to some extent and a bit more about you have this unusual opportunity to be able to make adjustments in the second attempt. Often, I know, like in boxing, you often see the rematch clauses as something you have if you're the favorite. Like the favorite gets to put a rematch clause in, the underdog doesn't. Probably a little bit the same here because Adesanya was the champion, so it's probably, I don't know if there would have been a rematch either way, but UFC do run things a little bit different, so they might have just, they just schedule the best fights a bit better than boxing does. As you can see by the fact that Fury and Usyk don't seem to be able to figure out a way to get what is clearly the only fight everyone really wants to see right now in heavyweight boxing. Don't seem to be able to figure that one out. But often boxing rematches are there to protect against the upset. So like Anthony Joshua lost to Andy Ruiz, and he comes back and demolishes him the second time around. Like, no complacency the second time around. Wait, complacency on Ruiz's part, but not on Joshua's part. He comes in and demolishes him. He tried to do the same thing to Usyk, and he was thoroughly beaten in the exact same way. Like, close-ish fight, but clearly Usyk was better than him, technically, as a fighter, both times, and he won both times as a result. Does this feel like a matchup where there is something just tactically different Adesanya can do to swing things back in his favor, or do you sort of see the Usyk version of this where it's just Pereira can repeat the dose and probably grind out another win? Or,
I'm not Eugene Behrman, so I've got no idea what Adesanya can or
suppose
can or
that's
can't
the guy
do,
to
right?
ask.
But I am interested in that, although, like, you might have thought that coming into the first UFC fight, because they had 2 kickboxing fights already, but it is a different kettle of fish with the takedowns and the mixed martial arts.
How long
I'm just
ago
more
were
curious.
those as well? The kickboxing?
I don't know. Who knows? But I'm more curious as to what happens. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I'm just curious about what's going to happen. And there is so much more to apply from the first UFC fight and a rematch here as opposed to the kickboxing fights coming into the UFC because they're completely different sports. So I am interested in what is different from the city kickboxing side of things with Adesanya executing his skills and the game plan laid out by Eugene Behrman and the coaching staff, because they might try to grapple more. They may look to control the fight in different ways, control from distance, getting more and closer in with some clinch. But again, if you go down that route, Pereira might knock you out. So I don't know. But we'll see what happens, and we'll keep learning about City Kickboxing's world-class abilities. Let's wiggle into football, where we have... Let's just drop a couple minutes here on the Wellington Phoenix men, who face Melbourne City?
City, yes.
This is on Sunday afternoon over in Melbourne, and the Wellington Phoenix men, they are 5th on the ladder, City are 1st. You're telling me about the Melbourne Derby being replayed during the week, so Melbourne City are backing up from a midweek game. Wellington Phoenix have lost 2 in a row, which isn't good because they are 5th and the A-League finals involve 6 teams. So this is a really important phase for the Wellington Phoenix as far as getting into finals footy. We can't set up the bandwagon until they're in finals footy, Like, we can't build up that fizz until they're actually in finals, but we can lock in for the pursuit of finals footy. And that starts this weekend against Melbourne City. What needs to happen for the Wellington Phoenix to defeat Melbourne City?
Well, probably going to have to score more than 1 goal, for starters. Does seem to be on a Monday, by the way, as well, which I guess is Easter Monday, which is why. So It'll
Yeah,
be
Monday afternoon, sorry.
It'll be a spiritual Sunday. It's not Sunday, but it'll feel like Sunday.
Magical Monday.
Yeah, there you go. And Melbourne City are coming off a midweek game. The Phoenix haven't had that. City are at home, which is always an advantage for them. They're very, very good at home. But they just had a little bit of a grueling. It was only a 70-minute game because of the absolute weirdness of deciding to pick up where they left off for a rescheduled game rather than just starting from scratch. A game you only play 20 minutes in, a bit strange, but they did play on Wednesday night, and they will back that up on Monday. Phoenix have had the full week off, full week to prepare. They had a very disappointing result against Melbourne Victory, who City played in that midweek game in the Melbourne Derby. There's only one thing to do, and that's to bounce back. Like, if they don't, well, they might slip out of finals. They're only, 4 points... Did we say 4 points clear? Perth are on 27 and 7th, Sydney 28, Phoenix 31 and 5th. And then Central Coast and Western Sydney are both on 34. So within range, I think second place Adelaide on 40, who are just the informed team right now. There's no catching them. But third is certainly not out of the question. The Phoenix do have a much worse goal difference than Central Coast and Western Sydney, so the tiebreaker isn't going to be in their favour. But basically, at a point where they've had a couple more disappointing results than good ones over the last few weeks, they just first and foremost just got to grind away into the semi-finals, and that means getting a couple more results from their last 4 games. They did get a point away to Melbourne City last time. Melbourne City are the league leaders, runaway league leaders. They're going to get the minor premiership. Not confirmed yet, but they should see things through. But they drew 2-2 with the Phoenix last time. Costa Barbarouses scored like a 90th minute equaliser or something like that. It was a very early game in the season, but it was an important point for the Knicks and shows that they can go away to the best team in the league and get something out of them. Like they've got a little bit of a precedent there. As to how they do it again this time around, I'd like to see Clayton Lewis in the starting lineup because I just think his more creative passing, the other Ugarkovic and especially Roof are quite functional midfielders. I think Lewis will float around a little bit more and find overloads and whip the ball into the area. His set piece delivery will also be really important. Just getting him in there now that he's back fit again will be a big boost. Oscar Zavada seems to score a goal every game, so that's nice. There's a starter there. Someone else could score one on top of that. Would be nice. Krajev's been quite quiet for a little while. Costa Barbarouses has missed some big chances in recent times. Don't think David Ball has been playing near his best lately. He was actually on the bench last game. Someone like Ben Old might take this opportunity to step up. They've got Jan Sass as well. Jan Sass is a weird guy because he'll do an amazing thing and then he'll do a terrible thing. But you can cop that if the amazing thing leads to a goal or two. And I think he's played quite handily recently. I think he's starting to get a feel for the team and what his role is within that. Turn that into a goal or an assist or something like that and you can be the hero. There are guys there. Zavada's scoring a goal every game. He's never scored a second goal in a game. Lewis will hopefully come back into this team. He might be the guy, or he might be trying to set someone else up. There are players there, good attacking players in that team. Someone's just got to be the hero, basically. Someone's got to step up, bang a screamer into the top corner or something like that, whatever it takes. Or a scrappy little one based on a defensive error. Who cares? They all count the same. They've just got to find a way to score a couple goals and then keep the pressure on those teams around them. To respond to the setback. It's the pointy end of the season, so you're fast running out of chances if they don't. But they've got the team to do it. They've had the team all along to do it. We just got to see it, you know?
It's not quite time for the football Ferns to need a hero. They don't need a hero right now. But they do need some, training camps for heroes. They do need to identify some talent,
Prep schools.
develop the talent academy for heroes, hero academy. They need something to get a bit of pizzazz in that football Ferns team. They're playing games this weekend, and I've got 2 questions. The first question is, providing context around the opponent, because it seemed like when they were playing in Aotearoa, everyone was judging the football Ferns, and there wasn't a whole lot of like context or information about the opponent. It was kind of like the football Ferns suck without actually taking into account of who their opponent is and what they are capable of. So first question, who are the football Ferns playing this weekend? And are they better or weaker teams than the football Ferns in your estimation?
Well, they're playing in Turkey on neutral territory, so that's sort of like just a nice midpoint for the players based in Australia and the players based in Europe to find, the minimum amount of total travel kind of thing. That's a nice start. Like, it's a very important thing. I keep coming back to this because I think like the Chris Wood situation with the All Whites was another example. He flew halfway around the world and then got injured again when he was already injured to start with. Somehow managed to get injured on the other leg and now is out for the rest of the season. I think that travel is like, it's nice to have the All Whites, the football Ferns. It's beautiful to have them playing home games. It's amazing for the crowd. They've both got really big crowds. Like, it's been impressive. There's been a good turnout, even if the results haven't been amazing, although good win from the All Whites last time around. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. However, their best players don't play in the A-League for both of those teams. Their best players play in Europe or America, and that's a long way to travel. And I can't help but feel that is quite influential in the fact that both these teams always seem to have niggly injuries when they play. They're playing in Turkey this time around, so that shouldn't be so much of an issue. They are playing against Iceland and Nigeria. So Iceland, I mean, they played against Iceland not that long ago, actually. They lost 1-0 at the She Believes Cup, which was in America, very early in Kumkova's sort of time in charge. Can't remember if they had a full-strength team there. That might have been the first time where they were able to pick A-League-based players. I'm not 100% sure on that. What I do know is that they lost 1-0 because Aaron Naylor made a mistake very early on. They conceded like in the first 10 minutes and then pretty even play the rest of the way. Probably a more clinical team would have scored a goal or two. They could have easily won that game if they'd fixed that one glaring error that they always seem to have, which is not being able to shoot very well and finish their chances, the few chances that they do create, because that's the other factor. If you only create 3 chances, it's putting a lot of pressure on every one of those ones to be perfect, and that's a very hard thing to do when you're trying to finish chances. What you want to do is just create so many chances that you can afford to miss a few, because you're still going to score some other ones. They don't do that. They don't do either of those things.
Yeah,
but...
wait.
Yeah, go.
So do you think the football Ferns are better or worse than Iceland?
Right. I don't know. I think they can be better,
Okay.
and I think they can be worse, and it just depends on whether on how they go in that regard.
So roughly even with Iceland.
Yeah,
who's
they
the
should
other
be
opponent?
aspiring to be better than them, but they're not necessarily better than them. The other
roughly
team
even,
is
roughly.
Nigeria. Now, the African teams aren't amazing at women's football. It's a little bit surprising, to be honest, because I kind of would have thought that the diaspora would scoot them up, considering like French football, for example, is very strong. And anyway, Nigeria is ranked considerably lower than them, but I think probably, I don't know, I don't think outside the top 20 the rankings actually mean that much in particular. Iceland should be there or thereabouts with the Ferns. I think Nigeria should be a little bit worse, but you don't know, because they might just have 1 or 2 players who are like, they've got a striker, for example, who plays for Abby Ersek's team, who seems pretty handy, although she actually went off injured in the last game, so that might come to the football Ferns' benefit there. It's a tricky one to say, because I also thought at the 2019 World Cup, when they drew Cameroon as the lowest ranked team in their group, I thought, okay, well, here we go. Cameroon, the African teams aren't as good. They should be able to play around this team. They lost 2-1. Like, it's probably in a similar thing. I don't think Nigeria are as good as Iceland. I don't think Iceland are as good. I know Iceland are not as good as a team like Portugal, for example, who they got thrashed by last time. So it's kind of just like, basically there are 2 more games where it's like, if they play well, they can win. If they don't play well, they'll probably lose. Which is kind of what you want at this stage, because it means that the result is going to reflect the quality of your performance.
Do you think they can win?
I certainly think they can win. I will be
Game,
cheering
and
for
there's
them
two
to
games.
win. I'm both. I mean,
Both? Okay.
I think Nigeria the more winnable game though. Iceland is a little bit tricky, but they could have beaten them last time, so they should have faith that if they've been improving since then, which maybe they haven't, but I think they have in a lot of considerable ways, if not that one major way of scoring goals. So, I mean, it's a bit like the Adesanya fight where you're saying it's like we don't know, but we shall see how it goes, because it's set up to go in their favor if they can like tick the right boxes. Well, Millie Clegg has been included for the first time, which I think is just lovely timing. I think you 17-year-old prodigy, you don't want to rush her in too quickly, but you also kind of want her to get a chance before the World Cup, just in case to see how things are, how she compares to the other players. See out the A-League season, top scorer for the Wellington Phoenix, A-League season finishes, then you get into the football phone stuff. I've got no dramas with that. I don't think she's a player who's going to need like 6 tours to get settled or anything like that. She's not going to be a starting option. It's whether she's good enough to come off the bench, do a little bit, 10 minutes to go, you're 1-0 down, let's see what we can get. That's cool, love that. Mickey Foster is in from the start, although she was kind of in the squad last time because Rebecca Stark got injured and then she came in as an injury replacement, ended up featuring off the bench in both games. She seems to have nudged her way up ahead of Liz Anton as the backup left back. Anton didn't actually make the squad at all. That was a little bit surprising because Anton also does cover centre back, which is where she plays for Perth Glory. So I was surprised by that, but I think it's an interesting, an interesting thing, and it's one of those ones where like you have to make decisions now with the football Ferns. There is depth available. There are professional players who are not going to make the World Cup squad, who a couple years ago might have thought they would. That's how it's going to go. Like you have to make tough decisions with these things, and you just got to pick the players that you think can do the best. So Foster's set piece delivery gives her another little edge. That might be also something you might want to try late in the game.
Any more changes?
Other than that, not too drastic in terms of actual changes. However, the teams we're going to see will be quite different, because while the squads are very similar, a lot of players seem to be injured last time. So Vic Hessen is back. Vic Hessen will be starting in goal. Most of the Football Ferns' good results have come with Vic Hessen playing. It's like beyond a fluke at this point. It's a very clear trend. They play way better when she is involved. She's involved again. She's fit. She just played for Rangers on the weekend, in fact. And if she does get injured mid-tour, Annalite's also back, so Annalite's ready to go too as another backup. CJ Bott didn't play after the first game. Ali Riley didn't play after the first game last time. They're both back. They're both ready to go. Liv Chance didn't play the third and final game. Jackie Hand is back in the squad after missing the last couple of squads with injury. There's Rebecca Stott, I mentioned, missed the last tour. Well, she was on the last tour, but she wasn't able to play because of injury. She's back. Hasn't actually featured for Brighton since she returned, but she's been on the bench for a few games in a row, so she's ready to go. She's waiting for a chance. That's like at least 4 or 5 starters who wouldn't have played the most recent game that they played, who are back in. That's half your team. You already, like, half of your starting lineup is back, ready to go. That significantly strengthens them. And you've also, since then, Hannah Wilkinson scored a couple goals for Melbourne City as they've made the finals. Grace Jale scored a goal, bunch of it. I think she was like the 3rd leading assist maker in the entire A-League. Like, there's good form there as well. Both of them actually scored in the same game in the last round. A few of these other players, Click's match-winning double against Adelaide a week and a half ago. Like, a few of these players in tricky positions where they're trying to find answers have found some form lately. Even Paige Satchel, I wouldn't say has been amazing, but I think she played her best football of the A-League season over the last month. She scored a goal against Newcastle. Like, some of these players in the position where there is the most focus have been doing some things lately. That's good to see. Liv Chance as well, man of the match, player of the day in her most recent game for Celtic too. Like, these are all good, promising areas. It's a complete other thing to translate it into international football, of course, particularly for the A-Leaguers, because it is quite a big step up. But you'd rather be playing well coming into the tour than playing poorly coming into the tour and trying to make that step up. You know, the Football Ferns, it looks like a very similar squad, but they should be in a far better position to be able to play to their potential in these two games. And that's all we can really ask. If you play your best footy and still lose, well, you're just not as good as the other team. That's just a reality check for everyone involved, but it's just, you can't do anything about it. It's the state of the play. If you're under strength and you lose and you know you've got players to come back, that's where it gets frustrating, because you know you can be better than you are, but it's also something that's just kind of out of your control. Well, most of those injuries that hampered them last tour have cleared up since then. And the one big one that hasn't is Rhea Percival. Every recent time, I'm swinging back to the ACL chat as well, every time there's a little update, it's a positive one. This isn't a Steven Adams thing where you're waiting for an update and the update comes from the Memphis Grizzlies and they're like, yeah, nah, not yet. Like, just, that's annoying. Every time you hear about Rhea Percival, though, it's like, here's her first time back running on the grass again. Here she is, kicking a ball around, joining in training, not yet doing the physical, up against other players stuff, but that'll be the next step. And then after that, well, the next step after that is to start playing football again. And she's not that far away. Probably the Ferns' best player. We'll see what she's like coming off of an ACL injury. Obviously, there's a little bit of there can be a bit of a hurdle for players, but she's not far away either. Like, the Ferns are getting stronger. It may not look that way based on the squad that was picked, but they will be, as I say, they'll be in a much better position against Iceland and Nigeria to do some good things.
Let's get into Kiwi cricket. The Blakcaps, they are playing a T20 series against Sri Lanka. They won the second game, which was good to see. We've also got the Central District Stags. They won the Plunket Shield. They defeated Auckland in a must-win game. I think they were tied on points with Canterbury, but they won an extra game, so they won the Plunket Shield Championship, which is good for them. And the Aotearoa A team defeated Australia A, which featured all of them actually. They all featured one thing. And there is this idea among many Kiwi cricket fans about how old these players are. They're too old. We need younger players in the Blakcaps. We need, all these old players shouldn't be selected in the New Zealand A team. We need young players. And the dudes who perform are the old dudes. Tim Seifert's not old, but he's a benchmark player. Because as I said in our pre-match notes here, Josh Clarkson's got championship mana right now. He helped Central win the Ford Trophy. He played a key role in Central winning the Plunket Shield. Is Josh Clarkson better than Tim Seifert? I don't think so. Mainly because Josh Clarkson's excellence features a month of cricket. Tim Seifert is an international cricketer by his standard. Okay, throw up a nice young seamer. Adam Milne's probably better than them. And they were the key players in the Blakcaps' success over Sri Lanka, only in the second T20 game. But then you get into the New Zealand A team. Who took the wickets? Well, Scott Kugelheim took 5 wickets in this game. He was the only Kiwi bowler to take more than 1 wicket. Henry Cooper scored runs. Tom Bruce scored runs. Cam Fletcher scored runs to help win the game. Cam Fletcher, 56 off 40. Even getting into some of these other knocks, you got Doug Bracewell, 18 off 9. Scott Kugelheim, 10 off 8. Like, those are lower order knocks from senior players to help win a game. Cole McConchie hit a 74 in the first innings. Tom Bruce had 48 and 64. Central District Stags, their Plunket Shield success across the season. Tom Bruce, Ajaz Patel, Doug Bracewell, Brad Schmullian, fantastic domestic cricketer. He's not young. And this is, again, I bring this up because this is nothing, there's nothing wrong with Kiwi cricket. These are the benchmarks. This is what makes Kiwi cricket so good right now, is that the young players need to be performing better than the middle class. And the middle class is excellent, because that middle class makes up the Blakcaps ODI team that defeated Sri Lanka. That's where Adam Milne comes from. That's where Tim Seifert comes from. However, there are some young players stepping up and blending in with that middle class. Henry Shipley's taken a lot of wickets right now. I do get a bit of a Kyle Jamieson vibe about Henry Shipley because he's a tall bloke and a lot of deliveries are attacking the stumps. And I believe that's why Kyle Jamieson had rather immediate success in international cricket. Yeah, he's got the bounce, he's got the variations, he's got the swing, which is kind of the same swing as Shipley into the right-hander, away from the left-hander. But also they attack the stumps. A lot of bold, a lot of LBWs, a lot of nibble on deliveries that are coming from an awkward height attacking the stumps. And Shipley's been fantastic. I like his mahi. And Dean Foxcroft actually had the highest score for New Zealand A in that game. He had 97, and he's been a MVP of the domestic summer. So you do have Shipley stepping up. You do have Foxcroft stepping up. And they are putting themselves in this mix. And then just one last thing. Central won the Plunket Shield with Ray Toole taking 7 wickets, steamrolling through Auckland. It was actually the second time they had steamrolled Auckland this summer. Curtis Heafy, Heaphy, Heafy, bit of a strange one to say. I've read it a lot. I don't know how many times I've actually said Curtis Heafy. He's scored runs for Central. He's like 19 years old. Fantastic young talent. Clarkson has had a legitimately fabulous month of cricket. Like, Central Districts probably don't win the Ford Trophy or the Plunket Shield without Josh Clarkson. But again, it's a good month in a season. And other blokes have had multiple seasons of excellence, but Ray Toole is a lefty, so suddenly you've got Ray Toole and Ben Lister in the mix as lefties. Josh Clarkson's adding himself into the hitting mixer for some of these white ball teams. That's cool. And I'm noting those performances, especially the championship stuff from Ray Toole and Josh Clarkson. But as we're seeing with New Zealand A, and more importantly, as we're seeing with the Blakcaps, there is no shortage of really, really good Kiwi cricketers. And that is very strange for a lot of Kiwi cricket fans, I reckon. Like, I don't think they realise how good we are at cricket. We have fantastic cricketers coming out the wazoo. And that means there's a lot of blokes around 30 years old who can plug and play. There's a lot of young blokes who are establishing themselves in domestic cricket to then elevate into the middle class. So it's been a really interesting kind of week of Kiwi cricket. There is another A game coming up with the last T20 against Sri Lanka. Then they go to Pakistan. So we have this continuation of second tier Kiwi cricket. You've got a second tier Blakcaps and a New Zealand A team playing at the same time, both of which are predominantly made up of middle class cricketers. However, that sprinkles a bit of extra juice on the performances of Shipley, of Dean Foxcroft. Sorry, I got a bit ranty there. Just went off the rails a bit. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I just want to know where all the sort of popgun medium pace battlers who end up playing 20 ODIs for the Blakcaps have gone. Like, what's happening? Well, we've got depth and we've got like a Blakcaps T20 team that looks like a New Zealand A team, and they're still winning games. And then at the same time, there's a New Zealand A team, which I guess by definition must there be different formats, but you could argue that therefore must be a New Zealand B team because the A team are playing the 2020s because the first 11 are all in the IPL and they're winning through. It was a little bit of a silly game because it was like Australia were on top after the first innings, gave a sporting declaration so everyone could have some fun. and then all of a sudden the A guys started scoring runs. But they scored those runs against a good bowling lineup.
That's not silly. There's nothing silly about that.
Well,
that is the beauty of domestic cricket, is that the people involved are willing to manufacture a result, as opposed to like the game fizzing out.
Which we saw far more drastically in the Plunket Shield finale. Because if you're a Canterbury fan wanting to see CD not win, you would have absolutely loved it when the first day was rained off. You would have not loved it quite so much when CD scored, I think, a shade under 300, which was weird, because if they'd literally just hit one more, they were like 297 or something declared, literally scored 3 more runs, they would have got an extra bonus point. But I guess they didn't need the bonus point, because they knew that if they were tied on points, they would win, because they had the tiebreaker from having the extra win. So they didn't need the bonus point, they could have got it if they wanted. Then Auckland get to like 180 for 1. Mun Guptill played this game too, just reminded me. I was a little bit, always exciting to see the names like that pop up in the domestic scene. They get to like 180 odd for 1, and then declare like 100 plus runs behind, so that CD can set up. So CD can come in, slug a few boundaries, and set up a total for day 4, so that both teams could have a chance to win. If you're Canterbury, you obviously just want Auckland to bat out for a draw. Just keep going. Let's make this a 3-day game, and we're only 2 innings are taking place, and then they win the Plunket Shield. But Auckland, who have nothing to play for, are like, well, we might as well try win. So they declare early. CD put up enough of a thing to give them something to chase. Auckland come in the 4th innings looking to chase that down, and get absolutely skittled by Ray Toole.
Easy on. Shout out Liam Dudding. This was his 2nd game of the season in Plunket Shield. He took a 5-wicket bag in his first game.
Really?
And he took 3 wickets in this innings, where Ray Toole took 7. But Dudding dismissed Ryan Harrison. I think it's Ryan Harrison, who was batting 4, and George Worker, who was batting 5. George Worker faced 55 deliveries. So big man Ray Toole took the 7-wicket baggie, but Liam Dudding took a couple of key wickets as well.
Big yarns. And I assume, without thinking about it too much, between that NZA team and the Blakcaps current T20 squad, I'm guessing there would have been a substantial amount of CD's best players who weren't available for this Plunket Shield game, which was rescheduled because of the floods, wasn't it? They had to reschedule it. They were playing for a championship, missing, and also IPL as well. I'm assuming might have taken. I don't know who they would have had in that, but I'm guessing they were substantially under strength. I mean, you mentioned Tom Bruce, right? Was playing for NZA. There must have been a few others.
Doug Bracewell, Patel, Brett Randall. Brett Randall didn't play for New Zealand A, but he's like in his 2nd season of Plunket Shield, averaging below 25, I think. So he's been fantastic all season for Central. Then he's selected in the New Zealand.
Will Young's in the Blakcaps was another one.
Yeah, and then he's selected in the New Zealand A squad, but doesn't play. But he's not available for the Plunket Shield final. So you can look at that Central team. No Will Young, but the Blakcaps ones you always expect. So whatever. But the Tom Bruce, one of the best batters. Doug Bracewell, one of the best all-rounders in Plunket Shield. Ajaz Patel, Test caliber spinner. And Brett Randall, one of the best up-and-coming seam bowlers in New Zealand. So Ray Toole took 7 wickets. Central rolled Auckland in the match-winning innings without some of their best bowlers. That's, pretty impressive.
Some/most. I mean, that's championship areas, basically. Like, if you got... Like, that's considerably under strength, and they still found their hero at the time where they needed it. They didn't have to go to the Hero Academy because they've got just CD dudes ready to go. Including what did you say, Liam Dudding? What did you say, 2nd game that he's playing? And he comes up, gets some key wickets. Ray Toole's a lefty, eh?
Yep.
That's cool because there's not a lot of them in domestic cricket at the moment. Therefore, maybe that's a point of difference that could see him accelerate through that middle class, or into that middle class rather, because that's the point, is the young players don't jump the middle class. The young players join the middle class, and then from there, if you can set yourself above from the crowd through consistency and quality of performance over a number of seasons, because that's what it takes, because everyone else who's in that team has already got those number of seasons behind them. That's how you get up into Blakcaps fixtures, because the Blakcaps have a lot of options to choose from. I don't know. These are good times for Kiwi cricket in a weird way.
Raytul spent last winter with Essex as well. He played 3 games of one-day cup. I don't think he actually played any county championship for Essex, but England is trying to play as much cricket as possible, so the one-day cup is often at a time where it's like the 100 and everything else is happening, so he got an opportunity, and that wasn't spectacular, but he did get the opportunity. Auckland also have a 23-year-old lefty, Matt Gibson. So you've got Ben Lister, Matt Gibson, Raytul, Ed Nuttall.
There you go.
He's a lefty. So there are some lefties around, which is good to see, because we do know Aotearoa needs a lefty. Yeah, we need a lefty. It's not Kiwi cricket without a lefty. Should we get into some footy?
I think we might have to do some Warriors chat, eh? 20 big minutes on the Wazzers. Who they got this weekend? It's the Knights again, isn't it?
It is the Knights, and there's obviously a lot to chat about here, but I was thinking about one thing I included in my Aotearoa Warriors diary, because you're talking about like Adesanya rematch and having that extra footage and know-how. Wait, hold on, because when I was talking about the Warriors, it might have been in the Patreon podcast on Tuesday, you drew a comparison to like England cricket. They lose a couple early wickets, then Joe Root scores runs. And
yeah, right.
Fair play to you, like whatever ideas you come up with, I gotta respect your ideas. You respect my ideas, hopefully the audience respects our ideas as well. But in my mind, I was like, that is weird. Like, I'm trying to celebrate like Kiwi sport, and then you bring up England cricket, and I was like, what on earth are you doing?
Well, I didn't want to disrespect the Blakcaps by using the Kane Williamson example. I remember going through that in my head. That was the first thought I had, and then I was like, well, I don't want to say that.
Yeah, but it's not a
Devon
bad
Conway's
thing.
opening.
Like the Warriors' slow starts isn't a bad thing, as I'll explain in a second. Like none of it was bad, but it did get me thinking. Because the Blakcaps, their version of that is the bowling. It's not necessarily a slow start, but I was thinking for the common thread, like the Warriors playing, and like they do have slow starts, but they build into the grind and then they finish strong. We've talked about this before. The Blakcaps, if they don't take any wickets on one day, they're coming back the next morning, they'll do their plans, and they'll probably take some wickets. When you hear the Blakcaps bowlers talking, it's all about, we're going to do this for longer than the opponent. And so, like, if they, the opposition bats, puts the Blakcaps in, for the final session, the Blakcaps bowlers don't take any wickets in that last kind of hour of day's play. Looks like the opponent's in a really strong position. What happens the next morning? Blakcaps show up. They're at their best. They make the opponent make mistakes, take wickets. Easy. That's what the Warriors do. The Warriors, it's less about the focusing on the start and more about focusing on how they establish the grind to reap the rewards of that grind throughout the game. In the same way the Blakcaps bowlers, they are more than willing to get into the grind. It's like, we might not get you out now, but we know if we execute our plans for 10 overs, for a session, for a day, you're going to make a mistake and we're going to pounce on that mistake. So, yeah, I just couldn't let you, you're not gonna bring up like England cricket as a anecdotal example of some sort of strategy we're working with. A specifically Kiwi sporting strategy. I can't let that slide. However, the Warriors have played the Knights in round 1, and the Warriors have a lot of footage and experience of Lachlan Miller. Quite a live wire fullback for the Knights. He bumps a lot of tackles. Probably the Knights' most threatening attacking player right now. Obviously, K Pong is out, injured. And what do we know about the Warriors? How did the Warriors defeat the Sharks? Kick long, complete your sets, kick long, chase hard, whack and defense. And that was against William Kennedy, who, the Sharks have a fantastic back three. Ronaldo Mulitalo is one of my favorite rugby league players. Sione Katoa is very powerful and fast. And William Kennedy, he's more of a attacking fullback as opposed to like a robust Shans Nickel-Klukstad type of get into the grid of the defensive line and make meters. Lachlan Miller's a bit different. He's a tackle buster. And he might have had 9 tackle busts in that round 1 game against the Warriors. But now the Warriors, they not only have that footage and the experience of playing against Lachlan Miller, they have also executed their game plan consistently for at least 3 weeks, I reckon. And that game plan, complete your sets, pass the footy in attack, but complete your sets, offload, but complete your sets, get to the kick. And every game we have seen Sean Johnson control the game with his boot a lot better. So how the Warriors do that against Lachlan Miller and the Knights, I think is going to go a long way to determining this game. Because if they can restrict the go for it of Lachlan Miller, suddenly Greg Mazu, Dominic Young, their oomph isn't as powerful as it would be if Lachlan Miller's getting them on the front foot and bouncing across the defensive line, dragging defenders, and then suddenly Greg Mazu pops up for a powerful carry. So I think the strength of the Newcastle Knights is aligned with a strength of the Warriors, and I'm curious to see how that battle plays out. And another idea I was thinking about, because I've heard a few maybe more casual mainstream media type of outlets talking about Sean Johnson's kicking. And I was like, that's quite interesting because Sean Johnson's kicking won the game against the Sharks, right?
I concur. I do.
But what kind of kicking?
The long kicks, which I would suggest the same thing for the Bulldogs game as well. I know he scored the winning try, but it was the way they... Well, you said the last 3 games, really. I kind of agree with that. This is how you dominate the field position stuff, is good kicks, long kicks on your 5th tackle, make them start from inside their 20 meters. They've done that so well in the last few weeks.
But Sean Johnson won the game against the Sharks with his kicking. He won that game specifically with goal kicking.
Off the tee. That's a point as well. Literally the winning thing was the penalty goal, wasn't it?
But it's a bit of a mind funk, trying to be child friendly, because we do want to be for the kids, If you get your youngsters listening to us, because we do love Aotearoa and we do love Aotearoa sport, just trying to be a bit better for the youngsters, educate them, and it is a bit of a mind funk. It's a good one, mind funk. It is a bit of a mind funk when you watch Sean Johnson kick the winning goal, and Sean Johnson's kicking wins the game, but it's his kicking. It's not his goal kicking necessarily that won the game. And that's something, as you laid out, his long kicking is the most important thing for the Warriors. You've also got Te Maire Martin returning. He's on the left edge, so the Warriors scored a lot of tries on the right edge against the Sharks. Whereas you think back to, I think Viliami Vailea was quite strong against the Bulldogs. Te Maire Martin's there. Te Maire Martin was fantastic against the Cowboys on the left edge, because he's there. The Warriors scored their tries on the right edge against the Sharks because Te Maire Martin's not there. So you add Te Maire Martin, suddenly you've got, a bit more balance in attack as well. I'll drop one last thing here. Dylan Walker has subbed on for Bunty Afoa within 20 minutes of each game so far. So the Warriors are slow starters because their whole style of footy changes when Dylan Walker gets on the field. Bunty Afoa does his job, and Dylan Walker does his job, and they have very different jobs. I don't think Tohu Harris is going to play, but it doesn't matter because if you get Dylan Walker on the field after 20 minutes, suddenly it's all about passing, and the Warriors' attack changes. Bunty Afoa, he's going to run it straight. Tom Ale, he's going to run it straight. but Dylan Walker is a different type of forward, and I think that is why, like, all of these games I've been thinking the Warriors are doing this at the start of the game. We'll see what's happening at 30 minutes once Dylan Walker's on the field, because the eye test, the stats, the scoreboard, it all suggests that once Dylan Walker gets on the field, things change in the Warriors' favour.
Yeah, we did talk a little bit about that as well, that kind of trend and the variety of their play and the fact they can switch things up. We talked a bit about that in the Patreon podcast on Tuesday as well, didn't we? For people who happen to subscribe to our Patreon, I want to hear a bit more about that. There's some more chat there. I do still, I don't know. Hopefully this isn't another Joe Root England cricket comparison, but this is the thing with the old podcasting, is you just gotta record it live. You just gotta pluck the ideas that come to you as you go. You gotta rely on the muse a little bit. I don't have a metaphor here. I just find it really funky that the Warriors have conceded first inside 5 minutes in every single game, 3 of the times inside 2 minutes. Just check that now just to make sure that was true, and it is true. Then there's also this thing about how they've won 4 of those 5 games, and there's also this thing about how after 20 minutes they can change up what they're showing to the other team because they can bring on Dylan Walker, and I can't help but feel all those things are connected in some way. And obviously the score at 80 minutes matters a whole lot more than the score at 5 minutes, but it is still a weird thing. Just even if it's irrelevant to the state of the team, it is still a weird coincidence that they've managed to concede inside the first 5 minutes of every game, especially considering they go on to win 4 of them. And I don't know, I'm wondering if there's even maybe like a rope-a-dope type thing there, where the other team scores so early, lets their guard down a little bit, the Warriors know they're not going to be ruffled by it because they haven't been ruffled by it yet, so why would they start now? It's I don't know, and then because they can switch up the thing... Sport. Yeah. It is just sport, but that's why I'm saying it's just a funky coincidence that it's happened 5 times in a row. I wonder how long this can go on.
And like often, it's just some weird stuff, right?
Yeah, like a drop kick
against the Sharks, penalties and knock-ons and all that. Like, I don't know, but like this sounds pretty dumb, but in 5 minutes, you've had 5 minutes of the grind. After 75 minutes and 80 minutes, you've had 75 minutes and 80 minutes of the grind. And we know, the Warriors and us as Warriors folk, we're the grit and grind Warriors. So we love the grit and the grind. None of that is useful after 3 minutes. Like, you've only got 3 minutes of grit and grind. But after 60 minutes, you've established that grit and grind. You've established that fatigue level. That's where you reap the rewards. I do want to chuck out this idea, because no one's going to say it.
No one except for one person.
Yeah, so it's a bit like the old Mulatalo versus Kosi, Otara versus Mangere type of thing. No one's going to say it, but is Wade Egan better than Jaden Brayley?
I mean, maybe. The other thing with those kind of comparisons is there's also better head-to-head is one thing, but better fit within your team leading to better performances and wins is way more important. Like, you can be a better... Like, in terms of, I don't know, you compare it to like a game like FIFA or something where they scout everybody and give them a rating, and so-and-so's, Lionel Messi's a 95 out of 100 or whatever. Cristiano Ronaldo's a 94, therefore Messi's better, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Like, does their team win? Fit often matters more than raw talent, I find. Increasingly I'm noticing that in these things. And Wade Egan... I don't know, you can't not love the dude, because he's so perfect for how the Warriors are trying to play it.
It'll be very interesting, because Blake Brayley was the Sharks hooker, and now you've got Jaden Brayley, who's the Knights hooker. If you ask like any Aussie, they'll be like, yeah, Jaden Brayley's way better than Wade Egan. I think many people would have the same opinion about Blake Brayley. I think if you put Jaden Brayley or Blake Brayley in this Warriors team, the fit would be quite similar. So I don't know how to break it down any further, but like, Wade Egan's perfectly fine. He runs enough, he kicks enough, he's a good enough passer, and he is ridiculously tough. Like, And Freddie Lussick was doing the same stuff in the one game he played for the Warriors. I think that was against the Cowboys. Might have been Cowboys or the Bulldogs, but that's just an interesting...
It was Bulldogs, yeah.
It might be an interesting thing to track in this game because Jaden Brayley is the far trendier hooker. But I think Wade Egan's better, and you can go Lachlan Miller, far trendier fullback. I think Sean's Nickel Krukstad's better. What do people say about Jackson Hastings? Just a real footy player, controls the game, he's a leader, he's an organiser. Is he as good at that than Sean Johnson?
Even Tamati Martin.
I don't know. Daniel Saifidi, he's a New South Wales prop. Is he better than Fanua Blake? I don't know. Pity Mitch Barnett's not playing. I would have liked to see Mitch Barnett back up against the Knights and get his double banger against the Knights because I think he's better than everyone except for Leo Thompson. Big up the Hawke's Bay. Leo Thompson, fantastic starting prop, which is good for him. Probably lose against the Warriors. And he is Greg Marzu's Kiwi NRL. Greg Marzu's a Mangere East junior. So they've got them dudes there, which is good for them. But I think that it just shows you the perception about the Warriors and some of their players. Like Te Martin, I'd rather have him than Jackson Hastings or Phoenix Crossland. And that's the other thing about the Knights. They've had different halves combinations all season. Kalampong'a was there in the first game. You had Tyson Gamble and Jackson Hastings. You got Phoenix Crossland and Jackson Hastings. The Warriors they injected Ronald Volkman last week, but I think the solidity of, is that a word? Solidity? Solidarity isn't the right word?
That's a solidity is a perfectly good word.
I just love the spine. Nickel Krukstad, Tamari Martin, Sean Johnson, Wade Egan. And it's like, regardless of if Tohu Harris, I think a lot of these Warriors players are pretty good. Probably better than the Knights. And if you go centres, everyone's going to say Bradman Best is better than anyone the Warriors throw up, right? I don't know. I like Vailea. I'm not going to say it with my chest that Adam Pompey is better than Bradman Best, but he's doing his job to start the season, you know? He's doing his job.
And, like, these conversations would change if the Warriors lost 3 games in a row. That's kind of how these things go, where it's like the old rising tide lifting all ships. Like, good performances from a few players lead to good performances from others, and then there's a feedback loop going on there. Good coaching gets the best out of players. Like, we've seen a lot of that from the Warriors lately, and they've won a bunch of games in a row. If they started losing, these players wouldn't look as good. I'm just, the old perspective. The fact is, they're not losing; they are winning. And so, what we're saying is what we're seeing. Like that's the perception you're talking about. Interesting note on that spine too, because the spine looks really good. But you've seen Nickel Klokstad's missed a game, hasn't he? Tamati Martin's missed a game, and Wade Egan's missed a game. But I think they all missed different games. So I think they've had 3 out of the 4. And at least in every one of these games, they've had at least 3 out of the 4, and then there's 2 games where they would have had all 4 as well.
I think they might have won all of those games as well.
I think they probably did.
Yeah.
So I think it's the 3 most recent. I'm not sure.
Alrighty. Big up yourself. Big up Aotearoa. Thank you for being here with us. Hopefully you enjoyed the weekend of Aotearoa sport. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Chitcher.